Hi, this is the second video for week 4 in Unit 2 of DESI 612 for the International University of Monaco. Tonight we're going to talk a little bit about operation flows, and then we'll review value chain and supply chain. We'll discuss value streams, apply it to a specific industry, and discuss the role of operations in creating values. And then normally we would allow for questions. However, since we weren't able to connect via audio, if you've got questions, shoot me an email afterwards. So operations flows, when you look at it, there's a variety of different flows, and if you think of the classic value chain, you've got a lot of the flows set up from the material flows, that are initiated with some sort of marketing or sales initiative, to the actual operational process where the value is added and the materials are put together or assembled or reprocessed, or the services are assembled, if you will, in a similar manner and then processed to satisfy the customer need. The order is then fulfilled and by being delivered somehow. There's also information flows to do everything from capturing what the customer is interested, what they need or they want, as well as perhaps their actual order. I always like to think of Amazon when I think about operations flows, because we do the sales job, we do the interaction with the computer, entering the order, entering all the information right down to the information about the transaction. So we act as salesperson, procurement agent. We are the person that chooses and sets up the logistics or the shipping, our delivery process, etc. So we manage all the flows. Behind all that, behind the computer screen, is a whole lot of other stuff going on to make sure that that happens. It's information flows, material flows, etc. When you think about the different kinds of flows that you have in an organization, you can structure them a little differently. You can look at value chains as kind of an overall perspective that applies to basically any kind of industry. You have supply chains that specifically are related to, usually taking something of lesser value, raw materials, sand and dirt and cement to make bricks, for example. The making of that brick is the operational process where the value is added in a variety of different ways, from mixing to adding some water to compressing the bricks or baking the bricks or however you do it. And then there's the delivery, etc. And so the supply chain supports all that. You have value stream maps that really we'll go into a little bit later, but they focus on a specific segment of the process or the overall chain, if you will, and also integrate management and strategic components. And then process mapping looks very specifically at a sequence of steps, if you will, or actions, as well as some decision points within those actions related to making something happen. So, value chain, supply chains, often related to leadership and strategy, sort of longer term. You look at the entire thing from one end to the other. Management and operations tends to very much focus on tactics and specific pieces of the overall process steps. So this is the classical value chain as Michael Porter described it. You've got support activities and you've got primary activities. Supply chain, as I said before, raw materials to processing, distribution. Think of what goes into, for example, especially for American consumers, although McDonald's is a global brand, but what goes into making a hamburger or a chicken burger, fries, and a milkshake. A lot of activities have to take place in order for that to be delivered as efficiently and at the quality level and at the price level, therefore the overall value that the customer is looking for. And so there's a whole sequence of activities that take place in order to make that happen. The value stream, which I referred to earlier, it helps us to visualize more than a single process. So we look at maybe 3 processes in a row, from the supply side as it relates to those processes to the customer. And we can weave in a lot of the different metrics to understand exactly what's happening. How much material is used, how long does it take to process, how long do things sit around and wait to be processed, or how long do they move, how many days in transit or amount of transit time there might be. All those things are important because they help us to understand our processes better and therefore analyze our processes looking for improvements. If we look at the fast food industry in the US as an example, since I've already talked about McDonald's a little bit, the value ultimately is that we get predictable quality food and we get it fast. Operations' role is to design and manage the process to ensure that we get the predictable quality and the fast delivery. Now, if we look at 2 different companies, the first is McDonald's and the second is Burger King. For years, in fact decades, Burger King was positioned as "have it your way." That was their slogan. And they were competing directly with McDonald's And McDonald's would, in effect, say that uh, you can only have it effectively only the way that we serve it. McDonald's was focused on delivering consistent quality fast. Burger King was willing to give up some of that speed so that their quality proposition or their value proposition was to give it to you the way you wanted it. So the Big Mac would have standardized things on it: lettuce, onions, pickle, relish, etc., tomato. You couldn't choose not to have those things on there. If you ordered a Big Mac, that's the way it came. But a Whopper, on the other hand, the competitor to the Big Mac, you could order any way that you wanted. So have it your way or have it our way. What's the big deal? Well, it's really positioning, market positioning, if you think about it. You know, some people want the speed. They're happy with the Big Mac. They like the taste. It's good quality to them, good value to them. Other folks would prefer to not have onions or maybe not have tomatoes on their burger. And so they're willing to go out of their way a little bit. So Burger King was maybe focused a little bit more on quality, giving it to you the way you wanted it, whereas McDonald's was positioned a little bit more towards speed. At least that's the perception. The reality in terms of speed is that there's not a whole lot of difference in time. You know, the average amount of time for a customer to be serviced at Burger King, and these are a couple of years out of date, but in 2013 was just under 200 seconds. You know, a little over 3 minutes. For McDonald's, it was also a little over 3 minutes. It was about 190 seconds, so about 198 versus 190 seconds. So just a short difference. Now, if we also look at quality, and we look at a number of different large hamburger chains throughout the U.S., okay, you'll see that Burger King tends to come out considerably higher. I think, in fact, you'd look at it, it'd be statistically significantly higher than McDonald's at 6.3. Whereas McDonald's is at 5.6 on this particular scale. Okay? They're both at the bottom end of the scale, however. So you have to be careful to overanalyze this and to tout their quality too much. Another competitor, Wendy's, another national competitor, Wendy's, scores a bit higher than Burger King and considerably higher than McDonald's. So the positioning reality is, if we look at all these things together, including, let me go back quickly to the speed, you see that Wendy's actually is the fastest at about 40 seconds lower, 40 to 50 seconds lower than McDonald's, and maybe 60 seconds less than Burger King. So Wendy's has the faster speed, they have the better quality, so they're actually positioned in a better place than McDonald's and Burger King. And that's the reality according to customer surveys. So let's look at a value system map and a delivery process of a typical McDonald's. A VSM, you show the suppliers on the one hand, customer on the other hand, and you have some kind of forecast, longer term forecast, but then also weekly updates. So production control looks at the longer term forecast to make sure that there's enough hamburger meat and all the other things, buns, ketchup, everything else that you need to be able to satisfy, monthly and quarterly forecasts. The local McDonald's, there's the tens of thousands of McDonald's, has to put in their orders, but then adjust those orders on a weekly basis to make sure that they don't have too much inventory, which is a cost, but that they have enough inventory so that they don't lose business because they're out of something. Okay? When you look at it from a local burger assembly process also, there's some guidelines, how fast it should take to actually cook the burgers. How much uptime you can expect, maybe when you're not cleaning the stove or doing something else. How long does it take to actually assemble the burger and pack the burger? All these things are mapped out and all the time frames are known so that you can analyze those and keep track of that kind of information. If you see that you're going off, you can stop things, analyze it, and seek to improve it. So a value stream map helps us to do this kind of analysis and looks at things from the top level with the forecast and production control to the weekly updates to the orders to the relationship between the supply side and the delivery side and how long it takes to accomplish things for specific processes. If we use a process map, we might look at how customers order by a specific menu item. And so you go through the process of determining what it is that the customer wants. Do they want, what size do they want? How do they want to pay? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and any other choices that might be included in this. And you come up with a map. This is not very complicated, although it might look fairly complicated. But there are a lot of potential questions. So part of the idea is how do you streamline this, make it even more efficient. You know, at some point McDonald's came up with a numbering system. I'll have the number 1. I want it large, yes or no, they pay, that's it. So I don't have to ask for a hamburger, I don't have to ask for fries, I don't have to ask for a Coke, I can just say I want a number 1 meal. I get all that. They'll come back with one question related to size and that's it. So you can see that, this versus the previous one is a much quicker, much more efficient method for ordering meals at McDonald's. And you can do that in the walk-up counter or the drive-through, either way, and it streamlines the entire order process, which should allow you to get your meal quicker. By comparison, if you have it your way with Burger King, they would go through this entire process where you select the sandwich, and that would lead to a series of questions as well, potentially, and then you select what's on your sandwich, and then you pay, and then you determine how you pay, and then you receive your meal and you leave. Again, a fairly complex process. So if we look at this versus the previous slide, you can see that by having a standard product with no variables, no choice, and using a simple system to determine what the meal or the bundle is that you order, it can allow you to get in and out a lot more efficiently. And for many customers, that's what it's all about, having the right quality delivered to you in a very short period of time. So what do these value stream maps tell us? Let's take another look. They can tell us a lot of information. This one's actually more complicated, shows more steps. A lot of them only show 3 steps. But again, you have a lot of information you can look at, cycle time information, inventory, logistics, how long it takes to get from one point to the other point, or how long maybe it takes to process or cure, who's involved, if you will, sales, the underwriting department, etc. Any other kinds of information, delivery information, both in terms of procurement and the supply side, as well as the demand side or shipping to the customer. So a lot of information is carried on these value stream maps, and they're all structured pretty much the same way from top down with a lot of critical information. And this is just another example, really almost a hand-drawn example. So operations, hopefully by now you're starting to understand that operations is all about seeking improvement. And in order to be able to seek improvement, you have to understand the steps or the sequences of how you actually add value. This is the sort of your profit. Okay? This is also the source of your cost control. And one of the big concepts that Lean promotes in particular is eliminating waste. If in this scenario, for example, if you can reduce the amount of time it takes to move products around in a factory floor by consolidating workstations, for example, even if you just save 10 or 15 seconds, but that operation is done 100 times a day, that can add up to a lot of time. Maybe you can eliminate a position, saving the salary. Or maybe you can produce twice as much material because you're focused on actually the value added part and the operational part. So there's a lot of reasons why waste is very critical for you to focus on. That's it for tonight. Thank you guys for hanging in there, and let me know if you have any questions.